In this video, we're going to talk about a battle where an army so large it could fit all the people of modern New York City inside of it crushed an enemy force twice its size. So how big was this army? Well, around 15,000 men, give or take. Okay, not quite as big as my original thought, but still pretty impressive. And who were the combatants here? Well, on the one side was an elite, highly trained, disciplined force led by one of ancient Egypt's greatest ever pharaohs, Thutmose III. On the other side was a coalition of Canaanite city-states led by the infamous and formidable Kadesh, the city that gave the great Pharaoh Ramses the black mark on his record by defeating him in battle a generation earlier. It was 1258 BCE, and the stage was set for one of the greatest battles in all of ancient history. The Battle of Megiddo. Let's get into it. Thutmose III is often regarded as one of the most successful pharaohs in Egyptian history. Under his rule, Egypt reached the peak of its power and influence, dominating the Levant, Nubia, and parts of the Near East. By the mid-13th century BCE, his reign would last a total of 54 years. He ruled over Egypt from 1479 to 1425 BCE. Not only was he militarily successful, but he was also a great builder, commissioning many impressive temples and monuments across Egypt. Some of his most famous building projects include the Temple of Ammon at Karnak and the Temple of Hathor at Deir el-Bahari. And there was probably some sweet chariot racing involved. He even built a road from Thebes to Karnak. How awesome is that? But despite his many accomplishments, Thutmose III is perhaps best known for his military campaigns, which are said to have been so successful that he earned the title the Napoleon of Egypt. This moniker is totally apt because, just like Napoleon, Thutmose set out to dominate his neighbors. And he did so through a series of brilliant military campaigns. His first campaign was against the Nubian kingdoms in the south. He then turned his attention to the Canaanites in the northeast. In 1274 BCE, he campaigned in Syria and Palestine, defeating the Casca at the Battle of Farsal and capturing the city of Kadesh. And in 1265 BCE, he led another campaign into Syria, this time defeating the coalition of Canaanite city-states. But wait, let's hold on right there. Let's rewind and explore these conflicts a little bit more. As we mentioned, at the time of Thutmose III's wars, Canaan was not under the control of a single ruler, but rather consisted of a number of independent city-states. Some of the most powerful of these city-states included Megiddo, which had recently defeated the Egyptians at the Battle of Kadesh, as well as other cities like Jerusalem, Hamath, Lebanon, and Upi. As we alluded to, these city-states were allied with the Casca, an Indo-European people who had migrated into the region during the Late Bronze Age and had quickly become a dominant power in Canaan. The Casca were organized into small chiefdoms and were skilled warriors, who were adept at using chariots in battle. Their dominance in the region caused several Egyptian pharaohs before Thutmose to attempt to subdue them. Unfortunately for Egypt, these attempts were largely unsuccessful. By the time Thutmose came along, the situation had deteriorated further. As we alluded to earlier, Egypt's previous pharaoh, his stepfather Amenhotep III, had sent expeditions into Canaan on multiple occasions, but they had failed to achieve any lasting success. In fact, as we mentioned, the Canaanites had scored a decisive victory against the Egyptians at the Battle of Kadesh. To make matters worse, the Canaanites had also begun to encroach into Egyptian-controlled territory, raiding into Nubia and the Levant. Clearly, something had to be done. So when Thutmose came to power, he wasted no time in addressing the threat posed by the Canaanites. One of Thutmose's first acts as pharaoh was to launch a campaign into Nubia, to reassert Egyptian control over the region. Once he had secured his southern border, he turned his attention back to the north. In 1274 BCE, he launched a full-scale invasion of Canaan, with an army that is said to have numbered in the tens of thousands. The campaign was a resounding success. Thutmose's army swept through Canaan, defeating the Canaanite and Casca forces and capturing the city of Kedar. With the victory, Thutmose had established Egyptian dominance in the region and secured the country's northern borders. He would go on to lead many more campaigns into Canaan over the next few decades, each one further cementing Egyptian control over the region. But it wasn't easy. While the coalition of Canaanite city-states lost to Thutmose at the Battle of Kadesh, they regrouped, and by 1258 BCE, they were ready to fight again. They assembled a force of 20,000 to 25,000 troops, nearly double the size of the Egyptian force under Thutmose's command. The Canaanites were confident that they would be able to defeat the Egyptians once and for all. They had the element of surprise on their side, plus they had numbers on their side. On the other hand, Thutmose knew that if he could pull off a victory, it would be one of the greatest victories in Egyptian history. It would establish Egypt's dominance in the region and ensure that the country would never again be threatened by the Canaanites. He had to win. Now, the location of the battle itself is not known for certain, but it is believed to have taken place near the modern Israeli city of Megiddo. According to the Egyptian sources, Thutmose's army was outnumbered 2 to 1. You gotta love those odds. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Thutmose's army was made up entirely of elite troops. The soldiers were well trained and highly disciplined, and the officers were experienced and competent. In addition, the Egyptian army was equipped with some of the most advanced weapons of the time, including chariots, swords, bows and arrows, as well as a massive battering ram. In contrast, the Canaanite army was a more diverse force. In addition to the Canaanites themselves, it consisted of troops from neighboring city-states, as well as mercenaries from as far away as Asia Minor. The Canaanites were also equipped with chariots, but they were not as advanced as the Egyptians. The battle began with the Canaanite army attacking the Egyptians. The Canaanites were hoping to use their superior numbers to simply overwhelm the Egyptians. However, they quickly found that the Egyptians were a tough nut to crack. The Egyptians held their ground and were able to repel the Canaanite attacks. At this point, Thutmose realized that he needed to do something drastic to turn the tide of battle in Egypt's favor. So he decided to unleash his secret weapon, a massive battering ram. The Egyptians had been secretly working on this battering ram for months, and it was finally ready. The battering ram was used to smash open the doors of the Canaanite chariots and break their ranks. At the same time, the Egyptian charioteers were using their advanced chariots to outmaneuver the Canaanite chariots. The Canaanite chariots were heavy and slow, while the Egyptian chariots were light and fast. The Egyptians were able to use their speed to circle around the Canaanite chariots and attack them from the rear. The Canaanite army was beginning to panic, and Thutmose took advantage of their fear. He ordered his infantry to advance, and the Canaanite army broke and ran. The Egyptians were victorious, and Thutmose was hailed as a hero. The battle completely shattered whatever hopes the Canaanites had of rebelling against Egyptian rule. In fact, Canaan would never again pose a serious threat to Egypt. The Egyptians went on to dominate the region for the next 2 centuries. According to Egyptian sources, the Egyptian casualties were extremely light, numbering no more than a few dozen dead and wounded combined. The Canaanite losses were much heavier, numbering in the thousands. Thutmose III's victory at the Battle of Megiddo would go down in history as one of the greatest victories of all time. His army had been outnumbered 2 to 1, but they had emerged victorious thanks to the pharaoh's brilliance. The battle also marked the beginning of Egypt's golden age. The pharaoh would go on to conquer Nubia, Syria, and Palestine, as well as parts of Mesopotamia and Anatolia. He also built extensively and reformed the Egyptian government. His reign was a golden age for Egypt. Thutmose died in 1425 BCE, after ruling for 54 years. He left behind a legacy that inspired generations of Egyptians. He was the epitome of what it meant to be an Egyptian pharaoh, a great warrior, a wise leader, and a builder of his people. He will be remembered as one of the greatest pharaohs of all time. What did you think of Thutmose II's tactics? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure to check out our video on 5 greatest military strategies from the ancient world. See you over there.